What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Downs Reacts back with another video. Today we reacting double upload. Been a little minute since I did one of these. Top 10 best comedy wrestlers ever. When I think of comedy wrestlers, guys like Heath Slater, Kurt Hawkins, and Santino comes to mind. But anyway, go subscribe to Cultaholic Wrestling. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Let Cultaholic know I sent you. That you coming from me reacting to it anyway. Let's get right into the video.
Do you know, I always bring a piece of paper to the ring with me, in case The Rock is my opponent. What's a chef's favorite wrestling move? A souplex. Why does Mick Foley buy supermarket brand cola? He always goes for the cheap pop. So I'm hilarious, obviously, but for others, comedy and wrestling can be a hard thing to mix. All you need to do is watch.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, like a lot of the comedy moments that WWE be try to go for a lot of times, to me it'd be cringe. So like, yeah.
5 minutes of WWE television to figure out that what those in the business find hysterical is actually about as funny as a bloke wearing a mask while pretending to shag a mannequin that's supposed to represent a dead teenager. Comedy and wrestling can miss more than it hits, but there are certain performers who consistently have us howling.
Boogeyman,
and for the purposes of
R-Truth got to be number one, cause like his comedy
countdown,
that WWE be having him do, in my opinion. His comedy isn't cringe. R-Truth comedy is like one of the best. Him and the old My Bad stuff. Matter of fact, I want to see a R-Truth funny moments compilation.
More about comedy wrestlers than the likes of Kurt Angle or The Rock, who may make our bellies ache but are proper main event stars. Laughter really is the best medicine, like closely followed by cowpole. So while funny don't equal money, wrestling would be less worth watching if it didn't occasionally make us titter. Titter. See? Funny word, isn't it? Like tits. So get ready to guffaw with me, because I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best comedy wrestlers ever. Join us.
See, I don't
Number
know.
10,
I don't want to get Orange Cassidy. Sound familiar, but I'm not too sure. I don't want to be disrespectful, but because I'm pretty sure he passed now. Was Doink the Clown considered a comedy wrestler? Because I wasn't around back then, obviously. So was he like a comedy wrestler, or was he like a main event star? Because I see a lot of people
Cassidy. A cult favourite on the independent circuit, Orange Cassidy has been one of AEW's breakout stars since they launched in 2019. Portraying a laid-back, emotionless slacker who tries his hardest not to try, Cassidy is a totally unique act and struck a chord with the audience almost instantly. Whether attacking an opponent with his effortless kicks, running the ropes with his hands in his pockets, or just giving a simple half thumbs up, everything Cassidy does is gold, and it gives his much more serious opponents plenty to play with. The King of Sloth Style has had great matches and many memorable moments in his disputes with Pac and Chris Jericho, and forms a tremendous trio with other funny boys Trent and Chuck Taylor. ESPN's breakout star of 2020 is someone who crosses over, with his gifable antics making him a hit with non-fans too. The man behind the persona, who used to wrestle under a mask as Fire Ant in Chikara, originally invented the character to differentiate himself from his peers who were perhaps better workers or had more impressive looks. How his act evolves remains to be seen, but I'm sure Freshly Squeezed will always be good for a few laughs regardless of his role or positioning. Number 9, the Hurricane. Old Sugar
forgot about him. Shane had Gregory Helms? Hurricane Helms, different characters that he had. Man, I remember
Shane Helms didn't really have much chance of standing out when he came over to WWE as part of the Invasion, but the real-life comic book fan superhero creation really endeared him to fans. The Hurricane, a bumbling caped crusader in black and green, instantly added a bit of humour, especially since he was partnered with Mr. Giggles himself, Lance Storm. The character clearly wasn't someone to be taken too seriously, as evidenced by things like the time he tried to chokeslam Triple H and Steve Austin in the 2002 Royal Rumble, but the Hurricane enjoyed plenty of success, winning the European, Cruiserweight and Tag Team titles within a little over a year of...
Wasn't he the longest reigning Cruiserweight champion too? WWE didn't care about that belt, like he was pretty cool.
Debut. Perhaps his best and most notable work was in his brief feud with The Rock, which featured priceless backstage interactions and an eventual match that saw Helms go over the Great One. Fans enjoyed the Hurricane shtick, whether it was moonlighting as ace reporter Gregory Helms or training superhero in training Rosie. Whether it was moonlighting as ace reporter Gregory Helms or training superhero in training Rosie
so Hurricane
to be his
Helms
sidekick.
and Gregory Helms isn't the same person? What?
He eventually ditched the guys and went serious and straight, but the character was so
beloved
that he was able to go back to it time and time again, and the Hurricane is still a welcomed cameo on WWE TV today.
You got a little
Number 8,
now.
Heath Slater.
I'm about to say Heath Slater, the one-man band, man, they buried the Nexus big time, bro. Like, so many people done tried to make videos on it.
It debuted on WWE TV and got going as a member of the Nexus, and then the new Nexus, and then the Core. Boy, those were fun times, weren't they? He was just a face in the crowd, another pretty generic rookie amongst several. When he was finally allowed to show more of his...
Justin Gabriel of the original Nexus. Wade Barrett had potential. David Otunga had potential. Michael Tarver, I felt like he had potential. Ryback, he had a good push, but he had more potential to live up to be more. Justin Gabriel, WWE don't like the small guy. Like, all those Nexus, even Heath Slater, but like, he was probably the laughing stock. Like, he was probably, to me, he was just more of an extra to the group.
His natural personality, however, he really began to stand out. His comedic gifts first became apparent in his dispute with various wrestling legends, an ongoing feud which saw him get his ginger ass handed to him by everyone from Rikishi and Sid to Vader and Lita. Clearly impressed with his work, WWE gave Slater his own group as he partnered up with Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal in
Jinder Mahal, whatever his name is, and Drew McIntyre both had decent push. McIntyre, his push surprised me because remember, he was supposed to be Vince McMahon's chosen one, and the crowd didn't like him, but
they eventually went on to become world champions, but Heath found his place lower down the card as someone who could take whatever he was given and make it work, which usually meant make it funny. His team with Rhino had great chemistry, and his desperate dad gimmick was a hit. How can you not love a man who tries to escape a Brock Lesnar beatdown by simply saying, "I got kids"? A favourite of the boys in the back, Slater would supposedly crack his colleagues up during matches by complaining about everything from travel to WWE catering. Number 7, William Regal.
Regal?
One of the most versatile...
I mean, he did have a little stint.
Wrestlers ever. William Regal excelled whether he was portraying a villainous rogue, a snobbish foreign aristocrat, or, well, being the butt of the joke. Because despite being as hard as nails IRL, our Regal is more than happy to make a fool of himself in order to entertain. Drinking piss-flavoured cups of tea? Bring it on. Wrestling a match dressed as a Las Vegas showgirl? Go and get me a pair of high heels. Falling into a hot dog cart and getting covered in mustard? I hope it's Coleman's. The real man's man was so good at physical comedy and excelled in backstage segments, especially if he had someone to play off of, like
him and Shawn Michaels trained so many of the great wrestlers now. So, like, you gotta give William Regal
Jerry or a Eugene. In the ring, his timing and expressions were next level, and while he was mostly serious when the bell rang, he would often throw in the occasional movement or mannerism that would raise a smile. By no means strictly a comedy wrestler, when Regal wanted to go for ha-has, he got his ha-has, knowing full well that he could flip a switch and go back to being a despicable villain whenever necessary. And really, anyone who can look this good while wearing a hat hard-on, sorry, I meant a hat hard-on. Oh, I've done it again. Number 6, Grado. It's yourself! Well, not yourself, it's Grado. It's just something that he says sometimes, okay? Like a catchphrase. It's great patter, alright? Right. So, Grado might not be everyone's thing, but his story is inspiring, and it goes to show just how much comedy can impact wrestling. Initially portrayed as someone who was way out of his depth on the Scottish independent scene, Grado established himself as an ultra-charismatic and lovable loser thanks to his canny ability to play the fool and had great comedic timing. Whether it was imitating Dennis Stampsby on the mat trampoline workout or dancing to Madonna's Like a Prayer, Grado became an indie sensation thanks in large part to the internet and his appearance in a Vice documentary. Fans gravitated toward Grado because he was sincere.
It's not that I'm not a like when I said that, it's not that I'm not a TNA fan. It's just I hadn't watched in years, so like that's what I mean.
To see him succeed, even if he looked knackered in the ring and his skills weren't as honed as most of his colleagues. His perceived weaknesses didn't matter because Grado was a character, and he used in and out of the ring comedy to climb the ladder, eventually becoming an international attraction for groups like Impact Wrestling, as well as a sitcom star in BBC's Two Doors Down and Scott Squad. A modern-day Dusty Rhodes with a buck-fast twist, watching Grado can't help but make you feel good. Unless you hate him, of course, in which case, away and boil your heat, you ball bag. Is that right? Number 5, Kikutaro.
Never heard of him.
Look, I don't know exactly why Kikutaro is funny. I don't understand anything that he says, and I'm not quite sure I properly understand the gimmick. Is he a cartoon baseball player, or what's the deal there? But he makes me laugh and has done for a long time now, showing that comedy is universal and that funny is funny regardless of language or cultural barriers. His timing is flawless and his matches are usually all comedy affairs with very little quote-unquote serious wrestling to be found. Not that it mattered as far as his career was concerned, because Kikutaro went from opening match novelty act to a man who has wrestled the who's who of Japanese wrestling stars, taking on everyone from Jushin Liger to Misawa and the Great Muta. Most of the time when he's wrestling them, he's dressing up as them and stealing their moves and mannerisms too, and his tributes have extended to other wrestlers like Bret Hart, Cactus Jack, Stan Hansen, and Goldberg. And of all the Bullet Club logo knockoffs and spin-offs, I'm almost certain that his Buffet Club one is the best. Now residing and working mainly in the United States, Kikutaro has proven to be a hit with American fans who never quite know what he's going to do. And I bet Jim Cornette loves him too. He's probably watching a Kikutaro match right now. Number 4, Les Kellett. I'm sure the old British wrestling world of sports stuff seems funny in a isn't that so old and weird way to some contemporary fans. After all, the wrestlers were mostly middle-aged, out-of-shape bricklayers in their swimming trunks, not the athletic Adonises that are the standard today. But in its day, World of Sports was extremely popular with the British public, and one of the anticipated highlights of any card was the comedic stylings of 50-odd-year-old Yorkshireman Les Kellett. Simply put, Les was a genius and distinguished himself from everyone else on the circuit at the time by putting lots of physical comedy into his matches, most usually as a way to ridicule and humiliate.
Yes, it's cool to have like a good like especially if they're good. It's like really good to have like a good comedy relief type of wrestler, because like to get from the serious side, especially if they're good. But if they're not good, then it kind of annoys me. So like, yeah, I don't know. Like I can't speak on him because like I say, the last couple people I didn't really
opponents.
Know.
Some
That's
of Kellett's specialities included feigning deafness in order to push his rule breaking to the limit, pretending to fall backwards through the ropes only to spring back and catch his opponent with a headbutt to the guts, and goading an opponent into a handshake or lock-up only to trip or flip them over. Number 3, Colt Cabana. One man who still champions the comedic stylings of Les.
I know him through CM Punk. Like, I personally don't know much about him as a wrestler, but like, I just know CM Punk, him and CM Punk pretty
Kellett, and has been a big supporter of comedy wrestling in general, is Colt Cabana. While most of his indie peers were wrestling a stronger, much more physically demanding style, Cabana took another route and worked a lighter style that placed an emphasis on telling a story.
A lot of these people are from AEW, so I guess this is a sign that I really need to give AEW a shot.
Comedy. Colt would typically use technical chain wrestling with intricate holds and counter holds to frustrate his opponent into making mistakes. From there, Cabana would mix it up and blend traditional wrestling with the occasional funny move or spot. His style is something that can be universally appreciated and has resulted in Cabana being one of the most in-demand independent talents of the previous 2 decades. His alter ego, Matt Classic, an old school...
Oh, but yeah, WWE should have gave this man a chance to.
Masked strongman from the 1950s is also great fun and further showcases Cabana's versatility and love of the art of wrestling. Speaking of the art of wrestling, his podcast of the same name has shown that Cabana is funny outside of the ring too, as has his stand-up comedy in places as prestigious as the Edinburgh Fringe. But Colt's bread and butter is his wrestling, and hopefully he can use his wealth of experience to help teach the next generation how to throw a proper bionic elbow.
That's fact. That's a fact. It ain't nothing like when these wrestlers be teaching each other.
Santino Morello. While not everything's
when you think comedy wrestlers, you think you Santino comes to mind. So he belongs on this list for sure.
No Morello said or did was side-splittingly hilarious, you have to admit that he was objectively a very funny wrestler.
Yeah,
he didn't start out that way though, instead being presented as the Milan Miracle, a planted fan who got lucky when he was plucked from the crowd and won the Intercontinental title in his first match. Over time, however, it was clear that Santino's real talent lied with making people laugh. Game for absolutely anything, Santino realized that he would have much more longevity if he became a comedy wrestler and completely dedicated himself to that role.
He really did have longevity too, so like, that's why he's so high on the
list. His offense and selling in matches was somewhat buffoonish, and his work on promos and in segments was a frequent highlight, as he regularly piss-pronounced a lot of his worms and got his fellow wrestlers to crack up at his bizarre comments and trash talk. Morello was also perfect for an odd couple tag team. His zaniness accentuated nicely by the stern...
This was free. Then they had him do the Santina gimmick too. It's like, yeah, this is probably the peak version
seriousness of a Beth Phoenix or Vladimir Kozlov. Whenever Santino found himself in a situation like being one of the final two in the Rumble or being seconds away from winning the world title, fans were always right there with him, as they wanted him to succeed after years of being entertained by him. Number 1, R-Truth.
Yep.
R-Truth has been on the WWE payroll for, at this point, what, 13
that man
consecutive years?
Don't age, bro. Like, I knew him from TNA back in the day, but you would think, looking at him, that this dude in his 30s.
That is quite an accomplishment, and most of it has to be down to how entertaining the man once known as K-Quick tends to be. When Truth came back to the company in 2009, he was pushed as a straight heel, but eventually he found his niche and became something of a walking punchline in the vein of Hornswoggle and Carly. But you know, actually funny. Because anyone who can make the usually unshakable Brock Lesnar corpse on live TV certainly
if you can make Brock laugh on TV, then yeah.
As a gift for comedy. While the cosplaying and wacky hijinks are usually good value, it's Truth's confusion about the situations he finds himself in which has been the most consistent source of entertainment. From cutting a promo about a match that he's not even in, to bringing a ladder into the ring and climbing it to grab a non-existent prize during the Royal Rumble, Truth's misunderstandings are typically played out to perfection. A favourite of Vince McMahon, Truth will probably be on WWE television in his 60s, as he has become a WWE staple, someone that can be relied upon time and time again. Just like his childhood hero, John Cena.